Well, welcome everyone to this online training. My name is Michael. I get to serve on the Grow team, and we are joined by Beth Cunningham, who oversees all of our children's ministry at Church of the Highlands. She serves on a central team, and my goodness, she's just one of the incredible leaders that we have, and she's served in so many different roles and is a part of so much of the life at Church of the Highlands. So Beth, thank you so much for joining us for this online training. And we're going to focus all about growth in kids ministry.
So exciting.
How to prepare for it.
Right.
And then how to navigate through it.
Absolutely.
And so today our hope would be to answer your questions, but we're going to get focused on that arena. That aspect of growing in kids ministry. And those of you who may be new to this online training interface, there should be a panel there for you to submit questions.
Yes.
Don't wait until the end of the webinar to submit your question. Go ahead and submit it now, or if Beth or I say anything that prompts you and you need follow-up, go ahead and submit that.
Absolutely.
We want to make sure that we cover all of your questions. We want to make this as beneficial as possible. So Beth, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Growth in kids ministry. That would be our hope.
Absolutely.
It's also one of the key things that can help you grow a church is having a vibrant kids ministry.
Absolutely.
So everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yes.
So walk us through how you prepare for growth with either staff, like developing the staff, or growing a kids team. Give us some key components to leveraging a team to prepare it for growth.
Absolutely. Well, one, I mean, we know that healthy things grow. And so we want to establish health on our team so that we create an environment that is exciting and engaging for children and families that they want to be a part of it. And I believe that you can have the best curriculum and you can have great decor, but if you don't have a vibrant and healthy team, parents and children, they sense that, right? And it will not grow. So we've got to focus on health. And one of the best principles we found in preparing for seasons of growth is always to be developing one person. And I know that seems simple, but I think so oftentimes we look at a schedule and we look at kind of this macro level, and oftentimes as leaders we need to kind of go back to the foundational elements of who am I developing. So I think if you're a kids ministry leader and you're listening to this talk, and maybe you're going back and listening to it later, I challenge myself and ask myself this question: who am I, Beth, personally developing right now? Because if I'm not personally developing someone, that means the layers underneath me are not developing someone. So we have what we call a commitment to always raising up a number two. So if it's a service leader and it's an elementary service and there's one person, a volunteer, a dream teamer in our language, that's leading that 9:30 or 9:45 service for us in elementary, that service leader knows that they should be already developing a number two. When you have the system in place, whether it's a 2-year-old lead teacher, a service leader, in elementary, you may have 3 or 4 key leaders in a service. Every one of them needs to be intentionally developing a person to take their place. That handoff may not come for 5 years. It may come in 6 months, but we need to have what we call, just put this in your vocabulary, ready now leaders. And the only way we can have ready now leaders is if the leadership base is intentionally developing one person at a time.
That's so good. So such a key point to growing your children's ministry is growing the people around you.
Yes.
A lot of churches, and even Church of the Highlands, we don't necessarily bring on a staff member to help that grow. We usually start with a volunteer level, as you're saying.
Absolutely.
So when we're getting ready to transition somebody, say from a volunteer role into a staff role, what does that transition look like?
So for us, one of the ways that we kind of lead in our campus models, especially even with when we're launching a campus, a lot of people are shocked to know this, but we rarely, almost never hire a full-time kids person. We are running kids ministry at over half of our campuses with part-time leaders. So they are in a part-time staffing capacity for us. None of them do it for the money. But you know, and it's this incredible pipeline that allows us to develop leaders. Many of them still have jobs in the marketplace. Some of them may be a stay-at-home mom, and they have this is a perfect blend of their children being small and expressing high levels of leadership and kind of meeting that need. But so so it's not uncommon for us to start people out in what we call part-time coordinator roles. And I find that a couple of things happen with those opportunities. One, we're going to have the person on the part-time coordinator role who really they know that they're called to full-time ministry. And this part-time opportunity gives us and them the chance to work that leadership out together and give them their next step. Some of them, you know, have many husband and wife teams that lead for us in elementary at some of our campuses, and they maybe own their own business. They're very happy and fulfilled in their job, but this is their high-level ministry expression, and it's awesome, and they stay in those roles a long time. Another advantage for having some type of part-time pipeline are young leaders. So let's say I get a 21, 22-year-old college student, and I see anointing, calling, leadership on their life. They may not be ready to come to your church yet and be the full-time person in charge of a children's ministry. But if we can give them this part-time leadership opportunity, or even leading at a high level as a volunteer, we're giving them the experience they need that's going to set them up to be a successful children's pastor one day. And so we love that idea of whether it's part-time or high-level volunteer commitment, high-level dream team commitment. We love on-ramping people in environments that allows them to grow and test their leadership so that we can help them determine, are you really called to do this full-time? If so, let me help you get to your next step. Or like some of our amazing couples who serve with us. I mean, I have couples that have been with us 5-6 years, leading in elementary in a part-time capacity because they love it. And there's a grace on their family, and they love their job in the marketplace, but they're leading at a high level in the church life. And that's a huge win for everyone. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. And then another part of it would be the actual team structure.
Absolutely.
That there are levels of leadership built into you start at the ground level.
I'm serving to this pipeline.
Exactly.
Would you like me to share a little bit about that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So basically, you can serve in kids ministry at a dream team level, and that just means, you know, maybe I serve twice a month, maybe I serve every week. But I'm holding a baby, I'm leading in a 3-year-old room, I'm leading a small group at elementary. That is a level. And then we have in preschool, we have this level called lead teachers, and so lead teachers for us are the teacher in that 3-year-old room. There may be 4 leaders in the room at the service, but that is the one who is in charge. And they're not in charge to boss everyone around. They're in charge because they have taken on the ownership of making sure this is how this classroom runs. They're oftentimes the face the parents will see at the door, so they see that same consistent face every single week. That's a role. Then we have what we consider in preschool our hallway team. This is critical, especially a lot of you, I know you're always working on staffing all those nursery preschool rooms. Develop a hallway team. So for us, a hallway team are really our high-level leaders who are super great with engaging parents and guests. So they've got the policies and procedures, but they may even be better with adults than they are kids sometimes. You know, they're the ones that are going to help diffuse situations with mom and dad in the hall. They serve as a support role to the teachers in the classroom. So if a child's having a meltdown in a 2-year-old room, it's one of these hallway leaders that's going to go and get that child out of the room, bring them into the hallway, blow bubbles, reassess behavior, try to get them back, That's it's a critical leadership level. Same thing in elementary. You know, I'm a small group leader, but then I become some type of service leader. I'm either helping, you know, lead stage arena, or I'm helping lead small groups, and the tiers just grow, and allows us to, again, let people express the calling God in their life and test them in different leadership opportunities so we can coach them along the way.
That's awesome. And it also makes it attractive to somebody who you've got a different gift or personality mix. You've got different levels for people to serve.
Absolutely. And I think it's true. It's important to remember, I hope you've heard from my language. I wasn't paying attention to how I talked, but things like when we describe ourselves, when you're describing your team, especially what Michael's talking about, building a team and building leaders, use the right language.
So good.
You know, you heard me say, I have lead teachers.
So good.
They're not nursery workers. And again, I mean, that's a historical term. It's been in the church world a long time. But when I hear lead teacher, I hear leaders, I hear service leaders.
Empowering.
I hear, you know, hallway leaders. You know, we believe we are a leadership culture, and we have the privilege of touching parents and our team and children. We have, you know, this 3-tiered audience, but talk in the language of leadership, and you'd be surprised how people feel empowered and they realize what they're doing is so important.
Yeah. So, for team, a huge component, just to recap where we are here, structure is important. So your team structure, and then creating leadership culture and shaping, be intentional about the language that you're using. Those are some key points for that leadership component. Okay, let's get more practical. Okay. So we've got our team in place, hopefully identified some areas where we can grow and develop our team. Let's get in logistics of, okay, a great way to grow your children's ministry would be adding a room. That might be a building project or something else. Give us some guidelines there in adding a room, maybe child to teacher ratio, square footage requirements that we're looking through, all when we're discussing adding facilities.
Absolutely. So, we work with these same challenges, and they're also, what I always remind my team when we're going to do something, that we have high class problems, right?
Absolutely.
Anytime you're talking about a ministry that's growing and needing more space for kids, that is the kind of problem, if you will,
Absolutely.
that you want to have. So yes, so for us, if we were to build a building and we had, say so of how that building was designed, what we look for is 20 square foot per child in the 5-year kindergarten range and below.
Okay.
So babies through, kindergarten is going to be 20 square foot per child is what we're looking from a construction standpoint, because we know in those preschool years, there's just more gear when you talk about cribs and all those types of things, and just more free play type space for the little ones. And also because you have higher ratios with, team to child, and I'll go over those in a minute. When we get into elementary, we use what's called a mixed assembly formula. So for instance, if you were in a main auditorium at any building, whether it's a theater, a standard building code would be 7 square foot per person. That's standard for an adult in, an auditorium that would be a building code. Obviously we have 20 square foot for the little ones. So with elementary, we use what we call a mixed assembly formula. And for us, that's 11 square foot per child for 1st through 5th grade. And a lot of that works for us. And our rooms end up being quite large and very sufficient in space for what we're doing. But we use an empty floor auditorium for kids, no chairs, flat floor. And so it makes the space incredibly usable. Our kids sit on the floor for, the large group teaching time and small groups, and we're able to spread them out throughout the room. At the beginning of the service, we bring in, gaming stations and stuff that are very easy to move to the side. So 11 square foot per child works great for us. Now, when you're going to build, or you're talking about spaces and ratios, it's important to think about the trends of attendance of your church. So a healthy child to adult ratio in what would be considered just standard church health for building purposes would be a 20% child to adult ratio. So if I have 1,000 adults on a Sunday morning, I would probably, if my total attendance was 1,000, 800 of that would be adults, 200 of that would be kids. That would be considered a very healthy kids ministry child to adult ratio. Now, what we found is that some of our campuses, not all of them, most of them trend around that 20% mark, but we have several that trend as high as 28 and 30% kid to adult. And that just depends on maybe the area of town that campus is in, location. There's a lot of things that come into play. So for us, we tend to plan, if we're building a building, we plan for a 30% kid to adult ratio just to be safe, so that we have margin. Because it has bitten us in the past, right?
Absolutely.
And again, that gives us that little bit of extra space, and that's what we work for. When it comes to your child to leader ratio, I'll quickly share ours. I would want to advise you do need to look at your state guidelines. Every state has different guidelines.
That's so good.
Now, obviously, you're a church. In most states, you should be exempt from those guidelines, but I do think it's an appropriate and thoughtful consideration to have to kind of understand what is the parameters that my state has set. So for us, we try to exceed, we want to exceed what the minimum that Alabama requires.
Well, the
even
people
though,
in the community are used to it at
a school level, a daycare level. And so although we are not held to school or daycare standards by the state, we want to be better than what the state is requiring.
So good.
So for us, when it comes to babies, your small babies, we begin taking them at 6 weeks. So in our baby rooms, at a larger campus, we would have 2 rooms. There would be a campus of babies who are not yet crawling, your infants, and then we'd have a crawling stage. But we're looking at those babies for a 1-to-2 ratio, 1 leader to 2 babies.
Wow.
Right. That's our goal. That's what we want. So if we had, 1 to 2, when they get into the walker stage, they're up and a little bit more mobile. We like a 1-to-5 ratio, 1 to 5. And then when they get into 2s and 3s, in 2s, to me in Alabama, 1 to 10 is completely appropriate. I still prefer us to staff a 2-year-old room a little bit heavier than that. So we'd love to be somewhere between that 1 to 5 and 1 to 10. By the time they're 3 and up, 1 to 10 is a good standard. And the reason we say that is because if you think about circles and you think about small groups and engagement, more than 10 children, it's hard, right? That's as much, and that's the same standard we would hold for elementary as well is that 1 to 10 ratio. Now, I always want to clarify because it's confusing when I say 1, with just the caveat that no one person is ever in a room with children. That's just how we do mathematical ratios, right? So just another thing, practically, logistically, we never open a room, any room, whether it's a baby room or an elementary auditorium, without at least one adult female. So there has to be an adult female in our environment. Again, that's not because we don't love men serving. We do. We just know most of our parents are looking for that nurturing adult female in any environment. So at least one adult female over the age of 18, and then a second adult in the room. Could be male, could be female, but we have to have 2. But there has to be 2 leaders for any environment is ever open, and one of them needs to be at least an adult female.
Great. So you give us some square foot. You help us figure out how many people, how many leaders to put in the room. Okay, so we've got some logistics there, work through building plans, but that also works in our portable scenarios as well. The things we're looking at when we're targeting a portable campus or
a location, launch. Absolutely.
Your team is always involved on the front end of scouting out any potential campus.
Yes.
So walk us through that whole, we're getting ready to launch a campus. How do we resource that local campus to be able to facilitate an effective children's ministry? Are we sending out a launch team? Are we working with their volunteers to infuse them? Help us understand what that looks like.
That's a great question. And let me just say, when it comes to, for those of you who are considering multi-site or maybe multi-site, I would recommend, just a little side note to what Michael asked, I would recommend that you follow our Church of the Highlands Kids account on Instagram. Let me just say that. And also some other great churches who do multi-site very well, because I think for me, one of the main ways I learn is by following other kid ministries' Instagram accounts, especially when it comes to multi-site strategies and how to make things look excellent.
Okay, so quick time out. Who are you learning from?
Always. So I'm always watching New Spring. I'm watching Elevation Church. I'm watching Saddleback Kids. I mean, I could name a host, but find some who do a really great job with their social media and their Instagram accounts, because there's a lot just visually you can learn that's creative about a multi-site venue. But yes, so what happens is when we go to launch a portable campus, we are obviously having interest meetings, and we're having people come from the community who are interested in Church of the Highlands. They're going to be interested in your church. Some of them, depending on how far that location is from where we have another campus, there's a percentage of them that may have been involved at Highlands at some point, but that's not going to be the majority. It's going to be 30, maybe percent if we're lucky, 40% that they've come from another Church of the Highlands campus. So we have a little bit of a base. But what we're doing is we're having to, in those interest meetings, and then offering our growth track, and we are training people, 2-3 months before the launch, and we're training them. They're going through our growth track. They're understanding our culture. They're understanding our DNA to an extent. Now, let me just say, when we launch a new campus in a city where we have not had a presence, it is very likely that someone from my central staff will be at that campus. Right now, we just launched a campus in Oxford, Alabama. It's going so well. We're so proud. We're 2 weeks in, but that's a kind of a prime example of what I'm talking about. We had a percentage of people who had been involved at Church of the Highlands, and then we have a lot of people who are coming in for the first time. And so what we know is we're going to stay and support that campus for at least 3 months. Because sometimes 3 to 6, just depending. And it's not because they're not amazing people. It's not because they don't love kids. It's just there is a way that we do everything. And for a campus launch to succeed, it needs to have staff support to help show them there's a Highlands way of doing things in our culture, just like there is a way that you do things. And you want to make sure that is caught and really in people's hearts, and they understand why. It's one thing for people to do something. It's another thing for them to understand why we do what we do.
Such a good point.
That's the value, because then when we pull out and we're back in Birmingham or we're at a different campus, if they understand in their heart the why behind every decision that's made in kids ministry, then they are owning it and just hopefully making it better and a beautiful expression to their community. But they can't catch the why in 2 weeks. We've got to serve with them and engage in those kind of common scenarios for them to catch that why.
Absolutely. And that kind of goes back to the leadership principle at first. You could train policies in 2 weeks.
Totally.
but we really want to develop those leaders and to give them the why behind it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because they have to be able to engage parents long after we're gone.
Right.
And we need them to understand the heart.
So there's some logistical things that are required if you're going to do an out-of-town campus or even an in-town multi-site.
Seriously, how does the copies get there?
Yeah, exactly. So how do we handle that? How do we handle that centrally? The copies for Sunday,
Sure.
we use print pieces in our kids ministry,
Sure.
and then there are other things. Well, maybe that campus needs to pick up on their own like during the week.
Okay, so that's a great example. So for us, if it's a portable campus, like many of you will have in your situations, for us, central, that means the full-time staff here at this broadcast location, they are doing a lot, almost everything for
Right.
those portable campuses, because many of them don't have office space. I don't have a full-time employee. Remember, children's ministry is being led
Right.
by incredible people who have jobs.
That's
and
right.
so we don't want to stress them. So literally we are doing everything for them. Copies are made for them. Their crafts are ordered for them. Their giveaways are ordered for them. And we have a courier system that we use, and we have a company that helps us with this now, but
Right.
let me back up and talk old school days.
Sure.
Because I think old school days
Oh,
are more
absolutely.
real. Basically, you need a system in house. If you're going to be going multi-site, if you have 2, 3 campuses, 4 campuses, that's a lot. And you're trying to manage that from a central office space.
Mhm.
Have a designated day that things have to be
That's good.
downstairs. We used to call it on the campus carts.
That's right.
We'd have literally like a rolling cart, and anybody could buy these,
Mhm. Yeah.
a rolling cart for the 4 or 5 campuses we had back in the day.
Right.
And every department would be responsible for getting things on that cart by a certain time of day. So your drop day could be noon on Wednesday.
Right.
And every department had to get their stuff downstairs. And what that does is it kind of, you're not having everybody running all across the
Sure.
world, having a million trips. And honestly, in the old school days, it wasn't uncommon for our campus pastors or one of their associates who were coming into the office that day
Right.
for meetings anyway to grab their supplies, and that's how they would get
Oh yeah.
to the campus.
Yeah.
And that was very normal. Now we have a company that sends all that out for us. It's the same principle.
Uh-huh.
It's just our scale is so large, we've had to hire someone to outsource it. But have a designated day, a designated spot, label everything.
So
Cannot
good.
stress this
So
enough.
good.
Okay, because your curriculum will go gone. Okay, you'll be like, I have it. You have to label everything, have them in sturdy bins,
Mhm.
have them grouped by week. So if we're mailing out or shipping out a month's worth of curriculum, we need to make sure it's packaged week 1.
So good.
Right? Week 2.
Yeah.
Because you remember, a setup and teardown team, they're just unloading. It needs to be very easy for
That's
them
right.
to grab and go.
Yeah.
And that would be my biggest thing. Labeling, good containers, and some type of date, a system where people aren't, running and stressing. No, this is the day and this is when it leaves.
That's good. And as far as quantities, we'd rather have far too much than not enough.
Absolutely.
Especially in a portable scenario.
Exactly.
We don't need them running to make last minute copies last minute. So we're okay with a little bit of margin.
We want a little margin, and you also want a backup plan in a portable scenario. So one of the things that we do at all of our portable scenarios is have some backup VeggieTale DVDs, have some, have a backup,
Right.
kids ministry for elementaries, a Christian DVD, because if something goes wrong with your curriculum or there's an issue, you have some way to facilitate a service until you can get that glitch worked out in the system.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Some great components. Another area that we haven't really tied on to would be maybe the lower hanging fruit here of not just adding a building, but adding a different service. So transitioning from one service to multiple services.
Sure.
How do you communicate the need for the serving?
Yes.
And then going from 2 services to 3? What does that scheduling look like for our leaders and any of our part-time staff? What are the expectations and how do you navigate that?
So for us, it's always a great opportunity to grow a team and move people around when you add a service. I know it can feel daunting at first because there is that window of the first few weeks that you haven't had enough time yet for your new volunteers, your new dream teamers to key into that new service. What we'll do is when we're launching a new service, we will go to our existing team and say, for 4 weeks or for 6 weeks, can
Right.
you commit to this service? Can you commit to 2 services even? Our key leaders,
Right.
give us 4 weeks to get this up and running so we can backfill
Right.
with new, the new people that come onto the team. One of the things you can do if you have some type of growth track or whatever assimilation you're using for getting people onto the team, when people come to our step 4, we will always promote the services that are new.
Right.
Or the services that need additional help.
That's good.
Now, if a person they're determined to serve at 9:45 and that's when they want to serve, well, praise God, we always want more people
Absolutely.
at 9:45. But we've trained our leaders who are facilitating our volunteer on-ramp, our step 4 process for our dream team. We train them, highlight the services that are new,
right.
highlight, the services that do need help, because a lot of times what we found is people want to be known and they want to be needed.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, we have awesome teams. You can serve any service you want.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to know where we have a need, right now we have a need at our brand new 4 o'clock. Let's use that as an example. And that is a thriving service. We have a lot of young families, and that is an area that you could make a difference. And you'd be shocked if you use the language that I just used, how many people will respond to that type of positive. Again, it's not pressure. All the services are great. We want you to serve wherever you want to serve. But if you want to make a difference, this is a place that there is a need.
That's awesome.
And there will be a percentage of people that will respond.
Absolutely.
Because you painted the picture correctly.
Absolutely. That's incredible. Okay, we got some
great questions.
Great questions from that kind of indirectly talk into building.
Okay, perfect.
Let's start here with childcare for Dream Team members.
Oh, that's a great question.
How do we incorporate that aspect into kids ministry?
That's a great question. So one of the things that we do is we open what we call Dream Team Childcare 15 minutes before every service. I know that sounds random,
right.
But we have huddles at 45 minutes before every service. So if you're a greeter, an usher, parking team, you're going to be having your little prayer and your little instructions for the day. Those last about 7 minutes on any given team. So we need people to be able to drop off their kids so they can get to their huddle. So about 50 minutes before every service, we're going to take Dream Team kids. So honestly, the only time that really affects us as far as having to open early is that 8 a.m. service and before our 4 o'clock afternoon service, because children that are serving, parents that are serving in the latter services in the morning, classrooms are already open. Those kids are just coming in late, if you will, to the previous service. And they just, so instead of, getting there, at 9:30 for a 9:45 service, they're rolling in at 8:55, and they're just coming into the back end of the first service and staying on through, if that makes sense. So, but so we do take care of children a little early so mom and dad can get to huddles. A common question I get asked is, do we have a volunteer kid room? And that may be what they're referring to as well. The answer is we don't. Not because I don't think they're amazing. For us, all of our rooms are fully utilized at 90% of our campuses for most every service. And so although I could offer, a volunteer kid room, and a lot of times at churches, this might be like a hangout room where they eat pizza and watch a movie. So they're attending kids ministry for one service and they go hang out in this room for the other service. For us, I could only offer that in increments at certain campuses, very sporadically. And so for us, our Dream Team kids just attend 2 services. They have since the history of our church. For the most part, that works out really well. We've never had significant issues with them being in the room for 2 services, and that's kind of our flow. It's honestly a space issue for us.
And it's also a great way to kind of invest in that generation who's already been there.
Absolutely. When they become like little leaders and they help hang out and they do things, I would encourage you. For us, we have 5 services on a Sunday at many of our campuses. And so one of the things we have had to monitor through the years is just making sure those children aren't staying for 3, 4, and 5 services. So, definitely have some type of policy in place. We love a worship one, serve one culture. We do have some Dream Team mommies and daddies that, kind of want to stay all day. And we do have loving conversations with them about how that's not necessarily good for their kids. But our kids hang great for 2 services, and they just become little leaders.
Great. Got another question about a church about to go into a building or remodeling.
Oh, nice.
Component. Do you have any advice on how to navigate that other than make sure you're in good relationship with the people overseeing that project. What are some other insights you could give on building projects?
Yeah, so that's fun. I didn't know when I became a children's pastor that I would build buildings. You know what I mean? Like, right. I was like, what is happening? But to Michael's point, I cannot stress enough the intentionality that you need to take in developing relationships with whoever is managing that building project. Scott right. Montgomery does that for us, and he is a dear friend. And I would say that I meet with him just to give you kind of a framework. When we are building a building, it is not uncommon for me to be meeting with Scott and his team every other week, if not weekly, right. about tweaks to this or ideas for that. And so you want to develop a strong relationship there. And you know, you want to have input. I found little things like, Beth, and this is going to sound silly, but what size toilet do you need in this classroom? I mean, is this a tiny toilet or right. a big toilet? Right. You know what I mean? They don't know. And so yeah. I'm speaking in to all of those things. The other thing I would say is, you know, we do have theming in our rooms in our nursery preschool. We have scaled back a lot on Absolutely. Theming in the last few years. In fact, all the theming I had in elementary, we've intentionally painted over several years ago. We have just kind of gone to a much more minimalistic approach right. To our buildings. And in nursery preschool now, we will have one themed art wall, and we are using it sounds crazy, but it's like a vinyl wallpaper. It's very durable and it's lasting great. It's holding up well for us. So instead of theming 4 walls, we're theming 1 wall. That's awesome. So you get the effect, but you're not spending the right. tremendous amount of money, and it's much easier to paint and maintain the building. So we've kind of gone down the road of right. less theming, still having themed elements, but not anything like what we were doing when we built buildings, yeah. 10 years ago.
Because you can wow somebody, but
you don't have to spend. And again, the update of maintenance is right. just a lot, and so we've kind of scaled some of those things back, and it's been a win for us. So,
but in other areas that we do focus, that we make sure we do well, is high engagement,
sure,
safety, and cleanliness.
Absolutely,
because those are the things that parents are looking for.
That's the thing they're looking for. So we're spending less, and I feel like we're getting more in some of those arenas with our buildings.
Speaking to safety,
sure.
Speak for a second on contracting police officers, hiring safety, security officers at those kids' areas. Is it beneficial or not beneficial?
Yeah, so we are a huge proponent of having contract police officers at all of our campuses. And so we have, depending on the size of the campus and the confines of the building, that the number of officers will vary, just from entrance and exits and all those types of things. But we always, no matter what the prototype of the building, we always have a uniformed police officer designated to kids mm-hmm. at every campus, portable right. or permanent. This campus we just opened 2 weeks ago, I actually have 2 uniformed police officers just for children, because I have nursery preschool on the first floor right. and they have an officer just for them, and have elementary on the second floor and they have an officer wow. just for them. So we're going to have huge commitment. And the reason I stress uniform is because we know fully that you could have a plainclothes officer and the children would be just as safe, period. But it communicates so much to your parents and to potential. It's like the officer in uniform is a de-escalation tool in and of itself.
So good.
Because if you have a common occurrence that we have would, potentially be like a domestic situation where you have, a husband and a wife maybe in a bitter divorce, right. or they're using church as a drop-off point for the children. And we've seen situations where one of them, they want to escalate an argument in front of kids check-in. Yeah. And all it takes is that uniformed police officer just walking toward that situation, and everything just it's beautiful. So for safety and for just the perception that it communicates to your parents, and I'm convinced it's a huge deterrent for some of those type of situations. Maybe they're not dangerous, but they're a hindrance. Right. To the environment.
So good.
So we just value, and that's a non-negotiable for us.
Gotcha.
It's a non-negotiable.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Real quickly, for those of you that maybe have to leave now or maybe joined late, this will be recorded and available for download or view at a later date. By the end of the week, it should be up on the resource site.
Awesome. Okay.
So look for a resource about managing or growing in kids ministry. this whole thing will be there.
Okay.
Got some additional things since
Sure.
we're in overtime. Talking back to the leadership structure,
Okay.
give us a review of that. And then also, like, how do we intentionally invest in maybe not the upper tier leaders, but the ones underneath? What does that communication, meeting flow look like?
That's great.
Give us another overview of that.
So kind of to go with a structure for like a part-time, we would have at every campus, we would have a part-time coordinator in elementary, preschool, check-in, and our Highlands Haven, which is our special needs ministry. So I'm going to have 4 key leaders at every campus, and they are going to be at that part-time paid level. Underneath them will be service leaders for elementary. So I'm the 8 a.m. leader, 9:45. Every service, you need to have 1 service leader. And underneath elementary, there might be some sub leaders. Like I'm in charge of small groups. I'm in charge of stage. I'm in charge of tech. Those would be common roles. In preschool, same thing. I've got service leaders. Those are my hallway leaders. But underneath them, I have lead teachers. And those are the layers that are actually leading the individual classroom. All of them are reporting to that coordinator over the system. When it comes to your middle layer development, one of the things we found that has been super successful is we are a church of small groups. So that is how we relate. That's how we pastor people. And one of the things that our coordinators do that has been very successful in developing leaders is instead of just using their small group for whatever, they actually utilize the mechanism of leading a small group to develop leaders.
So good.
So they're taking their, they're going to be leading a small group anyway, and they will actually have a group that is designed to grow leaders. This is very attractive, especially to some of our high school and college students who serve in kids ministry. If you throw out, hey, you're the person in charge. Like this would be like Beth saying, hey, I'm going to lead a small group for anybody that serves in kids ministry and they want to get better as a leader. You throw that out there just to your leaders and you watch. You create an environment on Thursday night and you can practice worship songs. You can teach them a leadership lesson. You can have them, rehearse object lesson delivery on stage. However you want to use it, be creative. But if you create that community and then they feel like they're getting better as a leader, it's a great way to kind of mass train 15 leaders just by committing 12 Thursday nights to them.
That's so good.
Yeah.
And that really helps reinforce that life-giving culture.
Totally.
This isn't about what you have to do. This is what you get to do.
Totally. And we see the difference on Sunday morning when we see junior high and high school students who are part of those small groups and we see how they're worshiping and how they're leading and they're owning it. Again, it can be effective with your adults. It's especially effective with your student leaders.
Great. So what would you say to a church that currently they don't have enough Dream Team members to have 2 in each room for a service?
Okay.
How would you advise them on combining rooms? So like toddler
totally
preschool,
great. That's
what
great.
What does that look like?
I would say definitely just do not open a room with just 1 leader. Let me just stress that because it's not worth putting the leader or the children at risk for any type of allegation. So the way we would combine is I would have 1 baby room. So everyone who's not walking is in 1 room.
That's
okay. Good. So because they're, because you don't want to have 3-year-olds in with the babies because somebody's going to step on a baby. So you want to have all the babies together. And then if you could get 3 rooms in preschool, I would do walkers and 2s together. I would mix your 1s and 2s because at that point you're still changing diapers and they're still moving around. And then I would have a 3 to 5-year-old room combined. So I think you can do preschool well with 3 rooms.
Man.
If you have to, and that would be a good win. And that would be 6 people depending on how many babies you have. But I think that would be a manageable mix. And the way I would do that, I would call it babies. Toddlers and preschool, and that's how I would describe the rooms.
That's so good. And then to help build those teams, you're working on the team culture with that small group component.
Who do you go after?
Yeah, who do you go after?
Students.
So good.
Go after students. Teenagers are your best advocate and resource in a kids ministry. The right mix of high school students serving alongside adults is what will really bring instant energy, instant ratios. It's going to help you get your ratios right quickly, and you get to help develop the next generation church leader. And so I would aggressively go after some teenagers and make it a win for them. Feed them pizza, make it a cultural thing for them to want to be in your kids ministry.
So take the crosshairs off of your Sunday promotion, like, hey, pastor, can you promote this to the congregation
Right.
and focus more on your youth pastor?
Focus on that youth pastor, focus on teenagers, help them see that they're leaders, make it valuable, and just feed them. Like, you don't have to pay teenagers. You just got to order them some pizza and they'll go all in for you.
Yeah, feed them in compliments.
And that it's true. It's
absolutely.
True.
Okay, somebody came in a little late and they're asking about our Wednesday night service.
Oh, great.
And we've got some resources that outline what that
Sure.
looks like, but is that any different from our Sunday service?
Wednesday night is very different from our Sunday because obviously the time format's different. So for us, for a Sunday morning, we're running an hour and 10 minutes. You know, that's our typical flow. Pastor Chris is probably running an hour and 5 here at the broadcast location, but then our campus pastors obviously close the service. So we're between about an hour 10, but on Wednesday night, for First Wednesday, it's an hour and a half programming. So I won't go through all the service flow because, as Michael said, it is on the resource site. But I would say this, one of the things we've learned about Wednesday night, and we just do one a month just for clarity, but we theme those nights, and that's been super helpful and super fun for us. Right. So every Wednesday night has a theme. It has a giveaway that goes along with the theme. We do a special snack on First Wednesday that kind of, again, reinforces the theme. And we tend to teach in elementary. We focus on one of our 4 core values every month. So that allows us to teach the 4 values 3 times, in the year. So, we're going to focus on what does it mean to love God? What does it mean to love people? What does it mean to do your best? And what does it mean to have fun? Basically living a joy-filled life. And so we're going to kind of focus on those 3 times during the year in elementary, but theming and creating those extra giveaways and that fun factor are huge for us. I would definitely, again, kind of circle back to really encourage all of you to make sure you're following some kids accounts on Instagram and you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. Yeah,
and so for a theme for us, it would be the topic that we're discussing,
totally,
the giveaway, and then usually there's a small little photo booth.
Yeah, there's always some type of decor photo booth for parents. I mean, you have children that age.
Absolutely, yeah.
They get very excited about whatever the theme is. There's usually a dress-up component. Not every month, but a lot of times there's a dress-up component. Yeah. The kids love that, and it's a ton of fun. It's a great way to kind of set aside a totally different experience from Sunday morning and, just do a lot of fun things because we do have the extra time.
Yeah. Okay, got another question that came in. How do you keep people from feeling like they are missing out on the night of worship by serving in the kids' room?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you, one of the things that we dealt with a couple of years ago was we erroneously thought that by having a very simple First Wednesday. So let's say we're not going to do small groups. We're just going to have a longer video and actually our numbers shrank. And it was very fascinating because the people didn't feel needed.
That's so good.
Right? And so we restructured everything and we went back to like a 20-minute video. We added small groups. We added craft, the theming and the party. Our leaders get more excited about dressing up and all the crazy. And it doesn't matter. We had John Gray here last week and we had tons of people that chose to serve in kids ministry that night, even with a big speaker like that. Now, it does help that those messages are archived and they can go back and watch them. Obviously, that's a huge help. But we have found that the theming and the party environment, the other thing we've done on First Wednesday is we feed people really well. So we will order in something nicer for dinner for the kids team, and we step it up a little bit on their meal. And again, food makes people feel appreciated. It makes people feel loved. So I would think high theming, create a ton of energy, and they will want to be where the kids are. And then other thing you can do is put people on a rotation. If that really is an issue for you, kind of say, okay, well, you give me 6 First Wednesdays of the year, and you can switch it out that way. We have found that if we do the theming and the party environment right, most of our people want to serve regardless of who the speaker is.
Absolutely. Because you're bringing more value to it. Yeah. It's actually you're not doing childcare.
No, it's fun. It's a full-on party back there.
You're creating a worship experience for your kids.
Yeah.
And improving the needed and the known.
Exactly.
As you had mentioned earlier. Question, do we have lesson plans, curriculum for those First Wednesdays? I believe those
are on the Grow resource site. I can tell you that we are using an elementary Christian Broadcasting Network, CBN, creates an awesome animation series called Friends and Heroes, I believe is what it's called. Forgive me if I'm wrong, my brain, but they have done a great job of creating a curriculum, and that's what we use on First Wednesday in elementary. And because the videos are a little longer, they're about 30 minutes, which we need that type of cinema quality for an hour-and-a-half service. And those are really awesome. If you go to Christian Broadcast Network, you can order those directly from them, and we've been using them for about a year. They're very well done. They're very biblically based, very accurate to the scripture, and our kids love them.
Okay, got another question here.
Sure.
That I think we'll maybe end on, and it's this one's loaded.
Okay.
Very non-traditional ministering in a
Sure.
residential apartment community.
Okay.
Makes me think of when we do our outreach.
Sure.
Outreach kids, DC kids, and all of that. How can we divide that group or make that group work in a similar method to what we're doing on Sundays? Or do you need to do that? Like, how does that work?
So I'm guessing that you're in a residential apartment. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So for us, it just depends on the types of kids. What I'm always looking for is age appropriate. So you just want to look at any environment and think, are we able to group kids, whether you're using like play panels or if you're, sometimes we, as Michael's saying, we do a lot of outdoor ministry in the inner city. And, how are we grouping children in little pods, even if it's outside in a park, where there's age appropriate activities and leaders designating to keeping similar age group children together. That's always the standard. Is it age appropriate? Is it safe? And I think depending on the number of children, you can create that in a lot of ways. I wish I knew more about your specifics
Sure.
to be able to answer that more clearly, but.
Okay, I had a follow-up question about Infuse, how we train that. That's through step 4
Sure.
and a clearly defined process there.
Yes.
Give us that little rundown of that Infuse component onto the team, and then any parting thoughts that you might have for us.
So yeah, for us, when kids leaders come through step 4, they're going to be oriented to the culture and the vision and values of our kids ministry. They're also going to receive a handbook. We have created a video that I would recommend all of you kind of watch and feel free to use. It's called the BAN video, and it's basically 5 key policies and procedures. It's hysterical.
Yeah.
That we need every kids ministry leader to know from the bottom of their heart, understand, buy in, understand the why. And then what we do is we create a 4-week shadowing process for new leaders. So every leader that comes into kids ministry is going to be assigned to an experienced leader for a month, and they're going to shadow that leader for 4 weeks. So they really get more hands-on relational training. And before we start, kind of empowering them to serve without a buddy, if you will. And that's our flow. And then obviously offering small groups for your leaders in kids ministry or just further opportunities. And again, we don't require those. Those are opportunities for people to self-identify that they want to grow as a leader.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, any parting thoughts as we get ready to go?
Well, I would just say, that I'm always reminded about the scripture that in Hebrews, it talks about that, Moses was the builder of God's house. Moses built God's house, but God is the builder of all things, and so just, I remind myself all the time that God is building his house and that God is the builder of all things. And, I encourage you just to know that there's no one that loves these children more than Jesus. And there's no one that loves his bride and the local church more than him. And, and he has your back, and he is advocating in the spiritual realm on your behalf in Jesus' name, and that God will give you everything you need to reach the children that he has placed in your hand. And I believe that for you.
Absolutely.
In Jesus' name.
Absolutely. Well, Beth, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
I learned so much, and thank you all for joining us today as well. Let us know how we did. Complete the survey at the end of this webinar. Submit any additional questions that you want us to cover on future trainings, and we'll be happy to continue helping you grow.
Absolutely. Bye.